The President of the Canadian Labour Congress, Bea Bruske.
I am absolutely thrilled to be here with all of you today. And I want to thank your President, Chris, for his tremendous support that he has given to the CLC over the years. His input and involvement in the CLC's Executive Committee and our Canadian Council has been invaluable. In fact, Chris's active participation, his very pragmatic approach that he takes to things, and his dedication to finding solutions have been invaluable to all of us. He's been an incredible champion for workers across this country and led the biggest strike in Canadian labour history just last year and won. Chris, you are a deeply respected labour leader in Canada, and I know that I speak for all of the officers of the CLC and the 3 million Canadian workers that we represent when we say that you will be deeply missed, that we wish you a good retirement, and that we know that even in retirement, you're still going to raise your voice on workers' issues. Congratulations, Chris. I do love attending PSAC events because I know the passion and the energy that you bring to things make all the difference. So it really comes as no surprise to anyone that thanks to all of you, Canada has the most efficient public service in the world. Do you know what bugs me about that though? You are the most efficient in the world, but what bugs me is that we have right-wing politicians who want the public to believe that the public service is too big. The truth is, if you compare Canada's public service to our current population, relatively speaking, you are the same size that you were in 2011. Day in and day out, you deliver for people right across this country. You kept us going through a pandemic. You created new programs and new tools to help folks in Canada get the services and the support that they needed, which makes the whole return to work kind of discussion that some folks are having quite insulting, I would think. Because we all know in Canada that Canada's public service never stopped working throughout the pandemic. You never stopped delivering for people right across this country as we face some of our most challenging times of recent history. And thanks to your incredible work, Canada fared better than many other countries. You deserve better than the derogatory narrative of returning to work. You deserve to be thanked and treated with respect and dignity. And you deserve to have your voices heard in determining what your work conditions are. And I want you to know that the CLC stands right beside you in fighting for that. My friends, I have to caution you though. As alarming as the right-wing myths are that we're hearing, there's an even bigger storm on the horizon that we are all facing. Because we know that if Pierre Poilievre is elected Prime Minister, the attacks on public services will only get worse. At a time when we should be expanding services to Canadians, we can be sure that given the chance, he will cut public service and he will cut jobs. But you know, as public service workers, you have incredible power. Come election time, you not only vote to elect our leaders and our government, you also get to decide who sits across the bargaining table from you. You elect the Prime Minister and you elect your boss, and that's an amazing opportunity. You know, as someone who comes from the private sector, I would have given anything to not have to elect Galen Weston to be the senior dude that heads up Loblaw. Imagine sitting across the bargaining table from a Jagmeet instead. How amazing could that be? Friends, we have to be under no illusion that workers are having a really hard time making ends meet. I hear it when I talk to people right across this country. They're being shortchanged by their rich bosses, they're getting ripped off by grocery store CEOs and gas companies, and they want change. And that's what we're going to be fighting for. Change that gives workers better pay and more respect in the workplace. Change for the good of all workers across this country. But that isn't the kind of change that Mr. Poilievre offers. A federal conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre is going to create a country where workers and Canadians are less safe and will have fewer protections, where workers share less of the wealth, and where workers' rights are undermined. where employers will always have the upper hand. So we can't let that happen. We have to do absolutely everything in our power to expose Pierre Poilievre for the fraud that he is. You know, we hear all the sloganeering, the pro-worker road lines being tested by politicians, and our ears are ringing with colorful rhetoric that we hear. And we know that the countdown to the next federal election is absolutely on. We have politicians trying to win our votes already. And they're trying to do that by focusing on the very real frustrations that we are all feeling. But how do we distinguish between the honest and the hypocritical? How are we going to distinguish between those paying lip service to worker issues and those who are prepared to actually back workers? We have to do this by cutting through the noise. We have to challenge parties and their leaders to support the very organizations, unions, that support workers. And we have to do that by demanding clear platform commitments to get this done. So we are asking all politicians, do you support growing unions? You know, for far too long, governments have shifted the balance of power to employers. And now we have to demand that parties reverse the shift. We have to shift the power back from employers to workers. And that means that we have to demand policies that stop allowing employers to always have the upper hand. We have to demand stronger labor laws and measures that bring balance to workplaces. Make no mistake, if politicians want workers' votes, they need to enhance and defend worker rights. You know, it's no surprise that politicians are looking to court us. It's because they know that people are behind us. Canadians understand that unions deliver not just for their members, but for all workers in Canada. And we have the research to prove it. New research shows that Canadians overwhelmingly support unions. 3 in 5 believe it would be a good thing if more Canadian workers belong to a union. And I certainly believe that, don't all of you? A massive 70% believe governments should remove barriers to forming or joining a union. People want a crackdown on intimidation and on misinformation, and they want to remove the hurdles that are put in workers' ways. For years, we faced governments weakening labor laws, making it harder to organize, and that's meant a widening wealth gap. We see it all the time. The top 1% are doing better and better, and workers and their families are struggling more and more. Even in the middle of a global pandemic, provincial Conservative governments passed wage restraint legislation on essential public service workers. And some provincial Conservatives went even further. They launched an all-out assault on worker rights. They tilted things radically in favor of employers. They even took away protections for workers to be able to refuse to do unsafe work. Who in the world does that? Like, that is completely ridiculous. Think about that. The right to refuse to do unsafe work. They stripped away automatic card check rules in multiple provinces, making joining a union harder but easier for employers to obstruct workers from organizing. And in one instance, in Ontario, Doug Ford tried to use our notwithstanding clause of the Constitution to undermine collective bargaining, to try to ram through a collective agreement on the lowest paid education workers in the province. That was absolutely shameful. And what did Pierre Poilievre say about all of this union busting? Does anyone know what he said?
Bring it on.
Yeah, it was crickets. His silence was absolutely deafening. That was not a surprise to us. You know, Mr. Poilievre talks so much about gatekeepers, and yet he failed to stand up to union-busting gatekeepers like Danielle Smith and Doug Ford. But I think we all know why. For him to disagree with these anti-worker premiers, he would have to disavow his entire record as a politician. So I just want to review his record for a moment. Pierre Poilievre has targeted the RAND formula. Most of you in this room will know that the RAND formula that's been in place since 1946 is there to ensure that all union members equally contribute to the functioning of their union so that we can do the work of organizing, of negotiating collective agreements, and enforcing those collective agreements. He's repeatedly attacked union advocates. He's repeatedly voted for back-to-work laws and imposed low-wage settlements on workers. You know, the last time we saw such brazen anti-union busting laws in Canada was during Stephen Harper's government. They passed laws that impeded our ability to actually even operate as unions. But do you remember who was leading the charge in his government, and that Stephen Harper government? Sure enough, it was a younger Pierre Poilievre, proudly boasting about how he wanted to bring union-free workplaces to Canada. So whatever he claims today, Pierre Poilievre has a consistent 20-year record as an anti-worker politician. And I ask you, have you ever seen the man walking any picket line anywhere in Canada? No. Has he ever strengthened workers' voices?
No.
Has he ever raised his voice against union-busting gatekeepers?
No.
Sure not, but he sure is fighting hard to get power for himself. But he has never fought for worker power. The truth is, whatever he tries to claim now, Conservatives' goals align with corporate interests and not with working families. Conservatives want austerity and huge spending cuts, and they're never going to make price-gouging companies pay their fair share. They oppose investing in childcare, in public health care, and pharmacare. And in fact, we know that they support privatizing vital public services. Time and time again, they do the bidding of Bay Street CEOs and corporate lobbyists by putting obstacles in the way of worker organizing. So my friends, what do? What do we do? It's looking pretty dire out there. So I want to remind us how we worked really hard to elect worker-friendly politicians to repeal toxic anti-union laws. And I want us to remember how we pushed a minority parliament to come together and to deliver significant critical progress for workers on childcare, on dental care, doubling the GST rebate, and helping workers, helping renters, helping provide supports for renters. And now, today, this afternoon, the third vote in the House of Commons on federal anti-scam legislation. And of course, long-awaited pharmacare legislation. It was your hard work and the hard work of activists like you right across the country. That's how workers got these things done. And we're sure as hell aren't done yet. Millions of workers are counting on all of us. They're counting on us to crack down on companies who are unfairly obstructing workers from organizing. And we know that all parties in Parliament have to join us in fighting for automatic hard check certification and for anti-scam laws. And that needs to extend to every single province and territory across our great country. And quite frankly, we have to hold every politician to account if they fail that basic task, my friends. But you know, in every single election, we in the labor movement, we face our very own test. We can either choose to come together on a common front, or we're going to get swept aside. We can either rise to the challenge, or every single worker in Canada is going to suffer. It's up to us to act now and confront politicians trying to take us backwards, or our very hard fought-for gains are going to be put at risk. I believe in workers. I believe that we are strong enough to move governments, and I believe that together we can make sure that more workers have the dignity, the rights, and respect with having a union card in their wallet. Because if there's one thing that I've learned from working alongside all of you and so many other labor activists across this country, it's the awesome power of collective action of workers to improve their workplaces, their communities, and our country. With 3 million workers and 500,000 retirees behind us, the labor movement is strong and we are only getting stronger. Together, we're going to roll up our sleeves and we are going to get this job done. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, beats the power of worker solidarity. So let's get out there and kick some ass for the working